isn't at home, please leave a message at the beep. I must be out, or I'd pick up the phone. Where could I be? Believe it or not, I'm not home. Hey, I got another call coming in. I gotta let the machine get it. Bye. Believe it or not, George isn't at home. Please leave a message at the beep. I must be out, or I'd pick up the phone. Where could I be? Believe it or not, I'm not home.
Welcome into another episode of Ball Diamond Podcast. I'm the J-Man, and I'm glad to be here with you today. Coming up on the podcast, we will be discussing everything surrounding the Major League Baseball trade deadline. We'll play a little game that had to do with the intro song. I also have a message for Major League teams, more or less contending Major League teams. Also, Circle the Bases will be back this week, along with Series of the Week at the end of the program. Before we get into all of that stuff, I have to remind you that you can stay connected to this podcast through our social media pages. That is Facebook, Ball Diamond Podcast, both Instagram and Twitter at Ball Diamond Pod. Alright, time for a segment that we didn't do the last time, and that is Circle the Bases. Circle the Bases on the Ball Diamond Podcast. Alright, the first base we go to get you caught up on the Major League standings from around baseball. Let's start with the American League, where it's the Red Sox holding a 1.5 game lead over the Tampa Bay Rays and a 9.5 game lead over their rival, the New York Yankees. Turning over to the American League Central Division, it's the Chicago White Sox. They've opened up a pretty comfortable lead on the Indians. They sit at an 8.5 game lead over Cleveland and a 13 game lead over surprise Detroit. In the American League West, it is the Houston Astros opening up a 5 game lead on the Oakland A's and a 6 game lead on the Seattle Mariners. Heading on over to the National League, we'll start in the National League East, where it is the New York Mets holding a 3.5 game lead over the Phillies and a 5 game lead over the Atlanta Braves, who just still have not been able to just really get on that hot streak. In the National League Central, the Milwaukee Brewers hold a pretty comfortable 7 game lead over the Cincinnati Reds and an 8 game lead over the St. Louis Cardinals. And out in the National League West, it is still the surprise San Francisco Giants holding a 2 game lead over the Los Angeles Dodgers and a 5.5 game lead over the San Diego Padres. To second base we go to get you caught up on news from around Major League Baseball. The Tampa Bay Rays have acquired right-handed slugger Nelson Cruz for 2 prospects from the Minnesota Twins. Also, Andrew Chafin is going from the Cubs to the Oakland Athletics. To third base we go. Our players of the week this week in Major League Baseball, pair of utility men who used to be actually teammates. In the American League, it was Kike Hernandez. He had over 400 this past week with 4 doubles, a triple, 3 home runs. He walked 3 times on 9 RBIs. In the National League, it was Chris Taylor of the Los Angeles Dodgers who hit 5 home runs this past week. And I will take you home with this. On Saturday, it is July 31st. If you are a baseball fan, it is a national holiday, as that is the Major League Baseball non-waiver trade deadline. That's right, no waivers have to be signed. Teams are open for business. We have seen some excitement on some past Major League Baseball trade deadlines, like the Tigers acquiring David Price a few seasons ago back in 2014. We've also seen some other excitements in 2016, just before the deadline on the 25th. That was when the Chicago Cubs acquired Aroldis Chapman. They traded away Gleyber Torres. The Cubs would eventually go on to win the World Series, and then Chapman would end up leaving and heading back to the New York Yankees. And that was Circle the Bases. Circle the Bases is brought to you by J-Man Sports, any and all things sports. Before we get into my message for Major League teams, if you do hear banging around a little bit, you probably will. That is my mother, and she's okay, but she broke her foot a couple of weeks ago. She's in a boot, can't walk, she isn't as fleet of foot right now. So if you hear some banging, it's just her walking around, doing her thing. I'm not going to, yell at her and be that mean guy and say, "Oh, I'm recording a podcast. You need to stay put in your chair." I'm not going to be the mean guy. I'm not going to be the mean son and do that. We can all put up with it. The 3 listeners that are listening right now, we can put up with it. Okay? If I can, you can. All right? If that's okay. I'm not really asking because it really doesn't matter. But you're going to put up with it. Anyways, I could have made a really cool transition and say the Major League Baseball teams have to just put up with the fact that the Major League Baseball trade deadline is this Saturday, July 31st, as I mentioned in the opening, as I mentioned also in Circle Bases. And look, I grew up watching the Major League Baseball trade deadline, and it's probably, honestly, because it's the only one that happens in the summer, and so I can get behind it. Kind of just like NBA free agency. Like I'm really into the whole NBA free agency, NBA draft because it happens in the summer. Again, when it comes to hockey, I'm just learning hockey. I'm just figuring it out, understanding it. Because I said I like watching. I've always enjoyed watching it, but I've never understood it because I didn't grow up with hockey around. So I wasn't huge into the hockey off season in the summertime. And then football, I love the whole draft stuff. I grew up watching the draft, but I never was huge into the trade deadline for the NFL because, again, it happens in October. And honestly, when I grew up, I was only really just a Lions fan. I didn't know a whole lot about football and football players in general. And again, it happens during school, just like the NHL and the NBA trade deadline. They happen during school, so I could never really pay attention. Whereas with the Major League Baseball trade deadline, it happened in the summertime. So I could always watch it, could always find a TV, or when I got older and got a cellular device, a smartphone, I could follow it on there. And I always tell myself every year, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to watch it, I'm not going to follow the coverage and all this stuff. And I always break down, I always somehow find a way of watching it. This year I'm actually not going to, and I know I just said that I always say that. But I actually downloaded the MLB.com app, and so I will just get notifications throughout the day, and I'm going to do that because Saturdays are kind of my days that I do things around the house, and so I'll just get the notifications on my phone and on my watch, on my Apple Watch, and I'll read them, and if anything big happens, I'll tune on the TV. But I don't even remember going up north and having to watch it, and I remember watching it in a rainstorm, watching it in a windstorm. I remember paying attention when the Tigers, when they traded David Price to the Blue Jays. I remember I was at my dad's work. I was helping him out that day. And, I remember following it on my phone. And, so I grew up watching the Major League Baseball trade deadline. It was exciting, and maybe it was only exciting because the Tigers were good at the time. And so they were making moves, and it was, fun to kind of learn the guys that they were bringing in, and again, and even before, I would look up prospects, and I'd do my own trade proposals, and again, I would kind of mock this whole podcast and go a whole round table, even though there was only me. I would a whole round table. I'd change my voice and be like, "Oh, so the Tigers should do this at the deadline. Oh, well, you know what? I think the Yankees should go and get Justin Verlander, or I think that the Yankees should go and get Cole Hamels." Well, you know what? I think if I'm the Chicago Cubs, I would go after Aroldis Chapman. I remember doing that as a kid. Even into my high school teenage days, I remember doing that. It was fun, and moves were being made, and it was great, and looking up prospects and thinking of trade proposals was fun. The problem that Major League Baseball has done, as it does in most things, is it ruins it. And these teams have kind of ruined it. And it's kind of my fault because these are both things that I like, but this has kind of ruined the trade deadline. That is rebuilds and coveting of prospects. Again, I'm a big component of rebuilds. I'm a big component of getting younger. I'm a big component of getting younger so that you can have prolonged success. That's kind of the theory behind rebuilds, that you get younger, you shed payroll, then you can bring these guys up. They come up together, they grow together, they you start winning, you prolong your winning, you start spending and stuff like that, right? Like you just hopefully your window is longer than just basically trying to go out and buy everything, like what the Yankees used to do, or even what the Tigers used to do, just go out and kind of try to buy the World Series, right? And so I'm a big component of rebuilds, but again, Major League Baseball right now, there's a lot of teams that you could consider that are rebuilding. I mean, you look at any bottom feeding team. Again, you look at the Orioles in the East. You look at the Tigers, Royals, and Twins in the Central. You could even throw Cleveland in there in the Central. In just the American League, you look at Seattle. You look at the Rangers out west. Then you've got Washington, Miami in the National League East. You've got the Cubs, Pittsburgh Pirates. Then you've got out west, or the National League West, you've got Colorado and Arizona. Like, there are a lot of teams that are rebuilding right now. And what that causes is a surplus of players, and the problem that causes is there tends not to be as big of moves, because guess what? If I am the Chicago Cubs and I've got Chris Bryant, and I want your number 1 prospect, your number 3 prospect, your number 8 prospect, teams who are going to trade for Chris Bryant are saying, well, I'm not going to give you my number 1 and my number 3 and my number 8. I'll give you my number 18. I'll give you my number 24. I'll give you my number 37. And they're holding on to these prospects. They're coveting these prospects. And it's just, it's a whole cycle. And it's frustrating because you want to see moves. You want to see big moves. Like right now, the Washington Nationals, right? I said a couple weeks ago that they should be sellers. They're going to be sellers at the deadline. They're 8.5 back. They're 45 and 54. They are 11.5 back in the wild card. They're going to be sellers, 100%. You've got Max Scherzer out there. You're dangling him out there. He has a no-trade clause, and he's on a 1-year deal. I understand he's 37 years old. If you are literally any other team, like if you're Milwaukee, if you're San Francisco, if you're even the Los Angeles Dodgers, if you're the Padres, if you're the Yankees, if you're the White Sox, literally any team in contention, you should be lining up your number 1 prospects like what they do, like when you know they're when the witness or the victim is picking out the people who they believe, you know, did the crime, like on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like when you stand behind the glass, you've got a lineup of possible suspects, and you have somebody kind of pick out who they believe was the person that committed their crime. Like, this is what they should do to the Washington Nationals. They should just basically line up, here are my top 5 prospects, you pick who you want. Hell, you know what? Have all 5 of them. I don't care. Because Max Scherzer's a game changer for any of these teams. Like, you think about if Houston got Max Scherzer. Then I'll take Houston seriously as being a World Series contending team. Like, the needle has moved so far, the pendulum has swung so much to, well, we got to rebuild, we got to keep these young, we got to keep these prospects so that we can have our prolonged success. Well, the problem is, the whole goal of a Major League Baseball team is to win the World Series. Not to have the best analytical department, not to have the best player development department. It's not to just have really good guys. It's to win a World Series. That's the bottom line. Nobody cares about how many players you develop. Like the Dodgers kind of got lucky last year by winning the World Series, because there were already conversations about, well, you know what, great, you can develop players, great, you have a great analytics department, but man, you can't win the World Series because you don't have the kahunas to pull off any big trades to fix any of your major problems. The teams have to do this, and the reason I'm ranting about this is because I look back at 2016, what the Chicago Cubs did. They traded for Aroldis Chapman, and they gave away Gleyber Torres. And a lot of people sat there and they questioned the move. I mean, yes, Cubs fans did really like it, but since then, I think Cubs fans have really questioned that move, because they're like, wow, if you would have had Gleyber Torres, maybe you could have had a little bit more prolonged success. You would have had great up the middle with Torres and Baez, and then you could have, you had Rizzo at the corner, at one corner, you had Bryant at the other corner. You could have had a great infield with Contreras as your catcher. You could have had a great infield. You could have won possibly multiple World Series that way. But damn it, I loved what the Cubs did. And again, I'm not a huge Chicago Cubs fan. I wasn't rooting for them to win the World Series, but damn it, I love it what they did. They grew a pair, and they said, you know what, we got a weakness in our bullpen. We're going to go after the best guy available. And you know what, yeah, we're going to give up a top-notch prospect. Gleyber Torres was either the top prospect or the second best prospect at that time. And they said, you know what, we're going to do it. He's a rental player. I get it. But you know what, we're going for it. And this is what we got to do, because you only live once. And they did it. They won the World Series. And guess what? The Yankees haven't won a World Series with Gleyber Torres and with Aroldis Chapman because he signed in that offseason back with the Yankees. Now, you can honestly criticize the Cubs the next year by trading for Jose Quintana. That trade was a little bit... Again, they went for it. They had a needed starting pitcher, but they gave up way too much for a guy who was at best a third starter. Way too much for the White Sox for that. But damn it, I loved it what they did in 2016. Even what the Astros did at the waiver trade deadline, acquiring Justin Verlander, because we'd heard two teams that were interested in Verlander, the Dodgers and the Yankees. Both teams got scared. Both teams got cold feet and said, nah, you know what, we ain't going to do it. We're not going to give Detroit what they want. And you know what, the Astros stepped up and said, here's our deal. We're going to give you Daz Cameron's one of our better prospects. We're going to give you Franklin Perez, one of our better prospects. And we're going to give you Jake Rogers, one of our better prospects. Now, you can blame the Tigers for not really developing those players, but the Astros went out and made that deal. They made that happen. They won the World Series. I mean, yes, obviously there was some trash banging that went on, but they went out and they made that deal. They ended up winning the World Series. Like, these contending teams, you can't hold on to your prospects. You just can't. I mean, and these rebuilding teams can't ask for a whole lot either. But at the same time, I mean, these contending teams don't hold on to your prospects. Just don't. Go out and make the move. There's only one team at the end of the season that's going to win the World Series. It could be you if you make these moves, especially if you go get a guy like Max Scherzer. You go get a guy like Chris Bryant. You go get a Joey Gallo. You could go win the World Series. You could be 2021 Major League Baseball World Series champions. Don't be the team. Don't be the New York Yankees. Don't be the Los Angeles Dodgers pre-2020, where you're too scared to go out and make the big moves. Grow a pair. Go do it. Like, seriously. Because holding on to these young prospects, I get it. It's going to prolong your success. Look at the Dodgers. Yes, they have proven that it can prolong your success. But that's not what it's about. It's about winning a World Series. You have a limited time. Win the damn World Series. Go out and do it. And it's funny because, again, I'm a guy who's a component of rebuilding. I love rebuilds. I love that. But I love rebuilds when contending teams are willing to give up something for what I have. Are willing to give up something for my asset. But right now, it's a bunch of nice players, low-risk players that get dealt at the deadline. I mean, yes, Clevenger got dealt last year, and yes, it was a bigger move, 100%, but it happened early on, and Mike Clevenger isn't like that household name that you just know. Like, even Zach Greinke getting traded right at the 4 o'clock deadline to the Astros a few years ago from the Diamondbacks, I mean, he's not the name that he once was. Again, the Cubs getting Aroldis Chapman, damn it, you know what? Good job for the Cubs for going out and doing it and winning the World Series. The Astros, even though it was at the waiver trade deadline, going out and getting Justin Verlander. Because that's what winning teams do. They go out and they acquire players, and they don't just acquire nice players. They go and acquire the best players to fix their holes. That's what these teams got to do. Quit holding on to these young prospects and go for the World Series. Because guess what? You might win the World Series, and the team that gets your prospect, hey, guess what? Gleyber Torres, I mean, since being moved to short, hasn't hit all that well, but he may be a Hall of Famer for all we know. But if the Yankees don't win a World Series, and the Cubs end up winning Cubs already have a World Series because of that trade, who won the trade? The Chicago Cubs. Coming up after the break, we will play Believe It or Not with George Costanza and with all these Major League Baseball trade rumors. Stay tuned. Hey, it's the J-Man here to talk about my new show, The J-Man Show, a part of the new podcast series from J-Man Sports. It's it with the old and in with the new. The J-Man Show takes over for the old podcast, but adds its own flavor. Join me bi-weekly as we discuss and have fun with sports news. The J-Man Show is streaming exclusively on the new J-Man Sports YouTube channel. The J-Man Show, anything sports. Alrighty, welcome back. We're going to play Believe It or Not. I did this on the old podcast, RIP. I thought it went pretty well. I don't know who listened. Probably no one, but I don't care. I don't think anyone listens anyways. So who really cares? I just get to play this game, I guess, by myself. So it's Believe It or Not with the latest rumors surrounding some big players, some big teams, what's all going to happen on the July 31st trade deadline. So here it is. Believe it or not. All right, the first one. The Washington Nationals will trade Max Scherzer. I'm going to believe that because I think the Nationals do understand that, hey, you know what? Trey Turner's going to be a free agent. Max Scherzer might end up leaving. They lost Anthony Rendon a couple years ago. They lost Bryce Harper a few years ago. You know, Steven Strasburg, they tied their boat. So they tied their dock or tied their boat to the dock of Steven Strasburg. They shouldn't have done that. I would never have given him that long of a contract, that big of a contract, with his injury history. So they understand. I think that they understand. I think Mike Rizzo gets that. They have needs all over the diamond. To me, you got to trade the biggest fish out there. That's Max Scherzer. You're still going to be able to get a haul, I believe, for Max Scherzer if you are to deal him. I get he's 37. I get he's on a one-year contract. I get it. He wants an extension to, you know, so that he can waive his no-trade clause. He wants that extension. I get it, 100%. But if you're the Yankees, for example, okay, because they're the team that I keep looking at and going, they have a huge need at starting pitching. If you've got Max Scherzer to go along with Garrett Cole, I mean, you have 1A, 1B going down the stretch. You could presumably make up some ground, and you could maybe not on the Red Sox, but maybe with the Tampa Bay Rays, maybe you host the wild card game. And you got one of these two guys starting game one of the wild card game, or maybe you end up catching the Boston Red Sox, and you end up hosting a playoff series. And you end up maybe winning the World Series, because that's what Max Scherzer is. So yeah, I believe that the Nationals will trade Max Scherzer. All right, the second one that I have down, and that is the Philadelphia Phillies will acquire both top relievers from the Chicago Cubs. So the Cubs got two really good relievers. The Phillies need bullpen help. So you would think that that's going to be a match made in heaven. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Craig Kimbrell is going to be traded. I think both relievers are going to be traded. I mean, again, Andrew Chafin was the first one to fall. I think the Cubs having two bullpen guys, and for some reason the second one is just completely slipping my mind. Unprofessional, I know. But I know it's Craig Kimbrell, Andrew Chafin, and there was another player I am just completely blanking on right now. Who were all going to be dealt. Andrew Chafin was just dealt to the A's, I believe, yesterday. And so, do I believe that the Phillies, who have their biggest need is in their bullpen? Actually, you could argue it's also defensively too, but their biggest need is in their bullpen. They don't really have a legitimate closer. They don't really have anybody to even set up games for them. Seems like I should believe it, but I don't, because I don't believe that the Phillies are going to do it. I don't believe the Phillies are going to have the kahunas to do it. I do think that both relievers are going to be traded. I do think that Kimbrell, I do think the other reliever are going to be traded, 100%. But I don't believe they're both going to go to the Philadelphia Phillies. I think it's more likely the Phillies acquire one of those guys, but they're not going to acquire both. So I do not believe that. Third one I have is the San Diego Padres will repeat what they did last year. Now, if you know what they did last year, they were making trades like there was no tomorrow. Oh my goodness, they got Mike Clevenger. This is going in out of the offseason with Blake Snell and Yu Darvish. And I mean, they went ham between last year's trade deadline and the offseason. They went ham. And there are rumors that they are going to go ham again. They already added Adam Frazier from the Pittsburgh Pirates. There are rumors that they're going to be interested in Max Scherzer. There are rumors they're interested in Joey Gallo. There are rumors they are basically interested in everybody. Look, they're 5.5 games back. They're a little bit desperate. They haven't been playing great baseball. They played great at the beginning of the year. They had some injuries. Now they haven't been playing as great a baseball. And so I think they're going to be a little bit desperate, but I don't think that they can repeat what they did last year. I mean, they were just making deals last year. I mean, I can't even remember all the deals. I think they had 3 or 4 trades at last year's trade deadline. I mean, it was just ridiculous what they were doing to try to get a competitive team to try to get into the postseason. I don't think it's going to be the same thing this year. I think Adam Frazier might be their biggest get, and they might go after some bullpen pieces here or there, but I don't suspect they're going to go after one of these big guys. I mean, hey, I may be shocked, but I just don't think that they can repeat what they did last year. The next one I've got is the New York Yankees will acquire a big name. Now, the Yankees have been interested, have reportedly been in on Trevor Story, have been in on Joey Gallo. They have also, I mean, people are rumoring them to also be in on Max Scherzer, Trey Turner. Look, if I'm the Yankees, and I'm a Yankees fan, I want them to do that. Like, imagine this. The Yankees trade Gleyber Torres, and have to trade somebody else, but Gleyber Torres to the Nationals for Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. You get your possible shortstop for the next 10 years in Trey Turner. You get your 1A or 1B to Garrett Cole, whichever you want to consider. And so you help your lineup, and you help your rotation. And then on top of that, if you went after Joey Gallo, I mean, you could just blow this popsicle stand wide open. I mean, I would love that if I were a Yankees fan. The problem is the Yankees, Brian Cashman, I just don't think they have the kahunas to do it. The Yankees are always rumored to be in on people, but they just never end up actually coming through. They got a little bit of performance issues. It happens to 1 in every 5 guys. It happens. Okay, it happens. Performance issues is a thing, and apparently the Yankees front office has that when it comes to the spotlight, when it comes to them actually pulling the trigger on some big deals. So no, I do not believe that the Yankees are going to make a big move at this year's trade deadline. Next one I got is the Texas Rangers will trade Joey Gallo. There's a hell of a lot of rumors surrounding Joey Gallo, but I don't believe that the Rangers are going to actually trade him. This is an organization that for 2 straight years had really nice rental veteran arms that they could have actually gotten a lot for. Both Mike Minor a few seasons ago and Lance Lynn last year, and they didn't pull the trigger. So what makes me think that they're going to pull the trigger on right now their franchise player? That's Joey Gallo. Like, why do I think that they are going to trade him when they didn't trade the other 2? I don't see it happening. I see Joey Gallo leaving in free agency. I don't see him staying. But to me, they're going to have to get wowed with an offer, and I just don't think that they are going to because he still has a lot of swing and miss. He isn't a perfect player. Yeah, okay, he's a tremendous athlete, and yes, he's got tremendous power from the left side of the plate, but the problem is he's not the greatest defender of all time. He's not the quickest guy of all time, and there is still a lot of swing and miss in his game. And a lot of teams are not going to be interested in it. There are going to be a lot of teams that are interested, but there are going to be a lot of teams that aren't going to be willing to give up, I think, what the Rangers are going to want. Excuse me. And what I got down here is the San Francisco Giants will acquire a major player in this year's Major League Baseball trade deadline. I say yes to this. 100% I say yes. I think if you are a Giants fan, you don't like me. You hate me, actually, because I said a few weeks ago that I would sell if I was the Giants because again, the future, they don't really have any. But guess what? You only get one chance at the World Series. I just made a huge rant about it. You only get one chance at the World Series. If you are the San Francisco Giants, you gotta go for it right now. You gotta go and if you got a Max Scherzer, that puts you over the top. That tells me that you are legit contenders. If you go off and you go get some Ketel Marte, who's a very nice player, but you go off and get a Ketel Marte, that to me tells me that you're not necessarily confident. You're more or less going for the low-risk type of move. A risk that if it hits, it's great for you, but if it doesn't, I mean, oh well, like you're playing it cautious. To me, throw caution at the wind. Go out and get yourself a Max Scherzer. Go off and get yourself a Joey Gallo. Go off and get yourself a big piece or two. Go be the San Diego Padres of last year. Be them this year. Go and make some big moves. You don't have a lot in your farm system. I get that. 100%. And you're going to be mortgaging it out. 100%. But this could be your year. Go off and do it. 150%. And the last one here, the Chicago Cubs will trade all three of their big name players. That's Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, and Chris Bryant. I believe this rumor. I really do. If you're the Cubs, you can't keep any of these guys. You just can't. I mean, Anthony Rizzo is going to be the one that's not going to get you very much. He's a first baseman. That's what he is. He's not a super athletic first baseman. He's over 30. He's not going to get you that much. But Chris Bryant, I understand that, about a month before the All-Star game, he started to kind of struggle, and he struggled since the All-Star game, but he's a game changer. Again, you look at any of these teams that need bats. You look at Tampa. Hell, you even look at the Yankees, for that matter. You look at the Chicago White Sox. I mean, the White Sox could end up getting a guy like Chris Bryant, because guess what? I mean, they've been doing great without Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert, but you add Chris Bryant, you add those guys back, all of a sudden you still got Jose Abreu, you've got Tim Anderson. That could be scary. You start looking over the National League. You look at really any of the National League East teams in the Mets, Phillies, and Braves. Hell, you even look at the Cincinnati Reds, for crying out loud, in your own division. You look at the Giants, possibly even the Dodgers. They would like him for the multi-purpose standpoint. Even the Padres. I mean, I think any team would be interested in Chris Bryant. So I think Chris Bryant's the one you gotta move. And then there's Javier Baez. There's still a lot of swing and miss in his game. There's a lot of flair to his game. Some teams would be put off by that. But again, if you're in contention, if you are the Reds and you need a shortstop, you go off and you make the trade for Javier Baez. Okay? If you are, the Mets, again, with Lindor, you're not going to go out and do that. You're not going to do that if you're the White Sox. You could argue if you're the Yankees or the Rays that maybe you'd pull the trigger on that. So Baez is probably the one I'm not 100% sure whether he's actually going to be traded or not. But the other two, I really believe it, and I just believe if you're the Cubs, you gotta trade all three of these. So that was Believe It or Not with the July 31st non-waiver Major League Baseball trade deadline. Now time for Series of the Week. Series of the Week. So the series that I'm looking at, and again, there are some really nice series. You got like the Yankees-Rays, Can the Yankees maybe get, on a little bit of a hot streak here? Could they actually beat their arch nemesis, the Rays, catch kind of the Rays first, and then kind of work their way up of catching the Red Sox? You also have the Blue Jays and the Red Sox playing each other. But I'm looking at the National League East because it's to me, still fairly wide open. And you got the Braves playing the Mets. Now, the Braves trail the Mets by, I believe, 5 games in the East. And the Braves just really haven't gotten going yet. They haven't really had that, week to 10 days where they've won 7 to 10 games, and they've just, everything's worked for them. And the Mets, since the All-Star break, haven't been playing all that great. So I look at this as more of an opportunity for the Braves to maybe come back into this division. Even if they could just get a game on the Mets by the end of this series, I think it would be huge for the Braves going forward. I think that'd be a huge positive boost for the Atlanta Braves going forward. So I am watching the Braves and the Mets for Series of the Week. I'd like to thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And don't worry, you definitely will be hearing from me soon. Thanks.